And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. Big news yesterday Biden has officially announced that he's running for office. And two themes he seems to be centered on is anti MAGA and abortion. Your thoughts? And with the backdrop of 44% of Democrats believe that Biden is fit for office.
Yeah, recent NBC News poll said 70% of Americans don't want him to run. 51% of Democrats don't want him to run. I think what's a bigger indicator than him announcing is the way he announced. Generally, presidential candidates announce in a big flurry, in a rally, cameras around. He announced on a video released at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 a.m. Pacific Time. This pretty much indicates that he plans on running the same campaign he did in 2020, hiding in a basement. And this time, that's not going to work for him.
Oh,
More,
well, hold on. Speaking of hiding in a basement, I believe you're right on both accounts. He's trying to do the same rope a dope, and I believe also it's not going to work. But on that whole theme, RFK Jr., which you were right on this one. He's getting harkening back to, let's say, mainstream Democrats, a dying breed. He's kind of one of them, but he's already polling at 14%. Why do I bring this up? Because even though he's polling at 14%, which is pretty substantial, and right now there is no plans for any debates, which I think is extremely effing scary because it points to the Democrats knowing that if the man behind the curtain is ever unveiled, people would freak out because his mental capacity has diminished even in 2.5 years exponentially. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
I think you're absolutely right. The Democratic National Committee has no faith in Biden's abilities or his cognition, so they are not having primary debates. RFK Jr. would decimate
It
Biden
would
in.
be an electrocution. But here's another question. I'm sorry, but I have to ask you this as well: is can RFK Jr. force this? He's already at 14%. If he moves into 2025 by default, I mean, that's not going to look good either.
No, I don't know if he can force a
I
debate.
don't mean literally. I
Yeah,
mean figuratively.
but the fact of the matter is, so many Democrats do not want Joe Biden to run. If RFK can electrify primary voters, he can take this away from Biden. And he can actually use the fact that there's no debates to his advantage.
Like it.
He is 15 years younger than Biden. He can show
And
that,
he has mental cognition as well.
yes,
Another
he
salient point.
he can use the fact that Biden is not debating as evidence that he is not mentally fit for office anymore.
But isn't it delaying the inevitable? Because Biden will have to debate on the national stage unless they fake some kind of illness. I don't mean mental illness. Something they got to pull because I really truly believe this is not just partisan thought process. I believe that he's so mentally diminished more than even 2.5 years ago that if people actually knew how bad it is, it would be game over. Am I correct?
You are. I'm actually flashing on the movie Dave, where the president has a stroke, and instead of admitting it, they get a celebrity impersonator to pretend he's the president. And
Nothing would shock me at this point. I do believe that there's a patriotic duty that is missing in the Democratic Party, that it's power above our national interests, and I really do find it appalling that they're continuing with this charade that is literally dangerous and endangering all of us economically, politically, and militarily.
It is ridiculous, and it's further proof that the Democrats have been rigging their elections. RFK Jr. has already accused them of rigging this election for Joe Biden. We know that the Bernie Sanders campaign said 2016 was rigged in favor of Hillary. And in fact, in a court case, which was ultimately dismissed because the people did not have standing to file the case, the DNC actually filed as their response. It's essentially saying it's our election. We can do whatever we want with it. So they didn't even deny that they rigged it against Bernie. Now they're rigging it for Joe, not keeping him from having to debate. And I think it's even more than just his cognition. Because if you take a good look at the video that was released, and I love, I didn't catch who said it, someone on Outkick on Fox called the campaign "It's Weekend at Bernie's" too.
There you go. I
But
love it.
if you take a look at the video, he does not mention any accomplishments. You don't see him on the video for more than a quick second because he can't, put two sentences together. He repeats lies that the Washington Post has been saying for years are fake. So, I mean, this campaign has no basis in reality.
No, just like his administration. But even I think he's always been a path. He's always been a mean sob. Okay, he's not lunch pail Joe. He's a son of a bitch. And the other thing, he's always been a pathological liar. And even yesterday, a minor point, but he's almost like with Seinfeld, basically George just making up lies when he doesn't even
Yeah,
have to. He basically said he was born in the same hospital that his father died in. 100% lie. I mean, no one cares. He just
yeah.
lies because he lies.
He makes up stories that there's no reason to make up. And actually, if Joe Biden would learn the lesson of George Costanza, everything he's done is wrong. If he does the opposite, it will work.
Yes, the only thing
But
that can help Joe Biden is the Republican Party. There is a poll out though that a he's losing to a generic GOP ballot. He's losing
th-
generically to the GOP by 6 points.
he's losing to a generic GOP candidate by 6 points. However, I will point out that the generic, whether it's GOP or Democrat, the generic candidate almost always does better than the actual candidates because people imagine the generic candidate as the best possible candidate, which we never get on either side.
True. We'll see how it plays out. I think there's real problems here. I think you can't have the weekend at Bernie's, deja vu all over again because it's not the COVID
It's
epidemic. I think there's a real problem here, and there's also problems on the horizon because the economy looks like it's not getting any better. There probably will be some kind of major. There always is some kind of disruption in the world stage that this guy's increasingly unable to handle, and also the real president. I'm sorry, the affairs internal affairs advisor Susan Rice is now leaving, so that puts further pressure on numbnuts.
well, he also has another problem that I'm pretty sure he didn't anticipate. In 2020, the media was on his side. Bill Maher has been hammering the Democrats for quite a while already. And last night, after the Biden announced his reelection, Jimmy Kimmel started taking shots at him. Jimmy Kimmel has been securely in the left wing
Oh yeah, yeah,
supporter.
he's a left wing
So
operative.
he Biden is not going to have the protection of the media this time.
Do you really think it's going to permeate beyond talk show hosts looking for laughs? And in this case, it's cheap laughs because this is, I mean, you don't have to be a comedic
Right.
genius to come up with good material on this idiot. Do you think it'll permeate beyond late night hosts? It'll never get to Colbert because he's just, and he's not even a comedian. He's a
Yeah,
political hack.
Colbert is just a shill. But we'll have to see what happens because at this point, according to media research, more people actually get their news from late night talk shows than do actual news shows.
Interesting. Well, also on the Biden front, what do you think of this? Um, Marianne Williamson, who's also running on the Democratic side, a little bit of a, I think she's a self-help guru,
Yep.
kind of a little bit of a kook, but I think, again, even a broken clock is right twice a day. She said there'll be no young people, I mean, not literally, figuratively, turning out for Biden.
That's actually something that the Democrats have been worried about for a while. There is no excitement for Joe Biden among younger Democrats. And younger Democrats have been turning out in big numbers. Younger Democrats are why the Democratic Party did so well in the 2022 midterms. If they won't come out for Biden, that's a big hit for the Democrats.
Well, also speaking of a big hit or lack thereof, Kamala Harris was in Africa and she perpetuated another word salad that you'd have to smoke a joint to understand because if you're straight, you would have no idea what the hell she's talking about.
Now, Kamala Harris is going to be an albatross around the neck of this campaign because of Biden's age. People are going to be looking at this going, well, wait a minute. If something happens to him, Harris is going to be president. Harris has lower approval ratings than Biden does. And
Actually, she reminds me of Dave Chappelle's movie Half Baked because he really looks like a stoner.
I mean, it is absolutely amazing. I mean, Kamala Harris has made Dan Quayle look like a Rhodes Scholar.
Tolstoid, yes.
And people, yeah, and people are terrified of the idea of her ascending to the Oval Office. And the fact of the matter is, remember, she didn't even make it to the first primary
Less than
in
1%.
2020. So, yeah. So she has no chance of being elected president. Her only shot is something happening to Biden. The problem is with him being this old, this is a real possibility. And that is something that is terrifying voters.
Yes, it will. Yes, it is. And just to put kind of a spin on this, not a spin, I would prognosticate that if it ever happened, now or in his second term, God forbid, second term, you would see the stock market drop at least 2,000 points. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I really mean that. There would
Yeah,
be panic.
honestly, I think that if she had to take over, a stock market drop would be the least of our worries.
Oh no, no, no! That would be a bump in the road.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? No, that's nothing. I agree 100% with that. It would be interesting to see how this all plays out. Again, somewhat quasi in the political realm. We have Tucker Carlson of out of Fox. He was their biggest ratings person. I would say the leader of their definitely their leader of the prime time lineup. There's talk that One America News Network, a small kind of fledgling news outlet that's no longer on direct TV, is thinking about or considering paying him 25 million to join their team. First of all, why do you think he was out? Second of all, impact on Fox, and is there is Fox News starting to take on water?
Well, as for why he is out, um, if you take a look at the Dominion lawsuit, he was at the center of it. Well, when you cost a company $768 million, yeah,
It may
they,
happen to you. Yes, I would
yes,
agree. I know you were the golden boy, but you basically almost bankrupt the company, and also basically the paper trail of saying he knows it was bullshit, but he's still pretty. Yeah, you kind of gotta think
yeah,
that
you
you might
kind
be
of have
gone.
to. As for impact on Fox News, I will point out that right now, Fox News is by far and away the ratings leader. I will also point out that at one point, Glenn Beck was the largest ratings pull on Fox. Following that, Bill O'Reilly was the largest ratings on Fox. Fox fired both of them and suffered no ill effects. I
Okay, the
expect
only
this.
thing about that I would say push back a little bit on that. Glenn Beck kind of self-destructed. O'Reilly, yes, that was a huge unknown. I'll give you that one. Glenn Beck, not so much. But basically, you're looking at Tucker as almost like a cult of personality. He's almost have a cult-like following. Do you think it has any impact?
Honestly, I don't think it's going to. It'll have a short term impact. Obviously, they're going to have to figure out what to do about prime time now. But the fact of the matter is, the only ones that were really passionate about Tucker Carlson was the far right. And in fact, if you look at the comments that have been made, the people saying, oh, it's a shame that he's leaving, it's all far right individuals that Tucker gave an audience to. I think, quite frankly, these same people can go on Sean Hannity. I honestly do not believe it's going to have any long term effects on Fox.
Fair enough. We'll see how it plays out. Shifting to the corporate woke subject matter, we have Rasmussen poll basically saying that the majority of Americans support the Bud Light boycott, and also, surprise, surprise, their VP of marketing is now out. My first question to you is, please tell me you're in the business consulting, you're a business consulting expert. How do you spin that in an interview when you're the outed VP of marketing? That's pretty hard to say. Talk about your recent accomplishments. There you
Yeah,
go.
there's no way for her to spin this positively.
You can.
This
It's brain dead. Let's just be
this
clear.
was a debacle. And it was such a large debacle that Anheuser Busch has lost market share to other beer companies. Their stock has gone down. That's how big a debacle this was. It's not just one brand, it affected the entire company. They had no choice but to push her out.
Okay, there's also a thing, someone who teaches business at the college level, everyone can be a genius in the Monday morning quarterback. Hindsight's 2020, but this just on its surface is just friggin' brain dead. There's no explanation for it. It's ridiculous. Whoever thought that was a good idea, just get another career.
Yeah,
Take up
it was,
like landscape
let's
architecture or
bring in
something.
let's bring in an influencer who is diametrically opposed to our core consumer, appeals to a consumer that's never going to buy our brand or
Ever,
beer in general.
ever.
I mean, there was no justification for this. And just as a sort of back of the envelope analysis on this, here in Connecticut, and let's face it, you don't get too much bluer than Connecticut. Uh,
Unfortunately,
California, New York City, maybe that's about it. If you go to the supermarkets in Connecticut, the Bud Light section is filled. Nobody is buying it. And again, that's in deep blue Connecticut. So this was more than something that was happening in redneck states, as the woke want to portray it. This is bigger than just red states. This is across the country. People are tired of the woke agenda. They want the companies to focus on their consumers, not causes, not politics. And I've talked about this before. Some uh, the example I always use is going back a number of years in the toy business, where activists were complaining there were not enough female action figures. They needed female action figures. And Mattel and DC Comics released an entire line of DC superhero girl action figures and Wonder Woman action figures. And when Toys R Us went out of business, they had aisles and aisles and aisles of these unsold because activists were not buying the product, and these were not products that appealed to their consumers.
Well, there's another example of woke and go broke. Disney, how do you F that up? They're laying off upwards of 7,000 people, and four of those 7,000 will be at ESPN, which, let me just ask you this, I believe ESPN is a shadow of what it used to be. It was once the gold standard. No,
It was the gold
they could
standard in
dictate
sports.
their own terms.
It was the first sports network. It was the gold standard. And unfortunately, they decided to start making political comments instead of focusing on sports. Now, to be in their defense, they did have an uphill battle for viewers because you saw most of the sports teams start investing in their own channels. SNY, Yes, Nesson, Fox
Even
Regional
even
Sports.
MLB Network, NFL
Yes,
Network, yes.
NFL Network, MLB, which, quite frankly, left ESPN without a lot of content. So, yes, they did have an uphill battle. They made it so much worse when they started making political comments because, let's face it, the average sports fan is watching sports to enjoy sports. They don't want to hear about the problems in politics when they're watching sports. This is an escape for them.
Yes, but it's also indicative of it's the same thing, a parallel, not the same, but very parallel to Bud Light. The uppity ups do not understand their market. They think everyone's thinking the same way at the Chardonnay policy parties at the Hamptons, but they're not. And the other thing is, yes, it's political, but it's also boring. Not understanding who your audience is. This is not launching the space shuttle. This is not Meet the Press. It's supposed to be fun, and it is not. It's almost unwatchable.
And that is also a big part of the problem is they lost their way completely, not unlike CNN. This is another network that sort of fell into a rut and is struggling to find their way out.
And they're also up against it because young people, the core of their once audience, is beyond anything they did to screw it up, is not tuning in to cable news and cable channels for their information. They're going online. So in other words, there's no room for screwing up, and yet they did. Meaning, you have to do everything right, even to maintain where you are, where you were. But they even exasperated a already delicate situation.
Yeah, the big problem that they were facing with that is, as you said, younger viewers watch sports on their phones, on their apps. And ESPN had a chance to grab that audience with ESPN Plus, their streaming service. But I have to tell you, I was a subscriber to ESPN Plus for a while, and the service was terrible. It was impossible to navigate. It was impossible to find anything. And basically, all it was a way to watch ESPN. Well, ESPN wasn't airing the stuff that I wanted to see.
Yes. Flipping back in closing, getting back to the political landscape here, the debt ceiling. First of all, talk about something that's just comical at this point. That was maybe relevant 50 years ago. Please. So relevancy was the suspense of the pomp and circumstances and just be done with it. Second of all, who do you think wins this? The Republicans usually lose. I'm not so sure that's going to happen this time.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that'll happen this time either. I'm going to disagree with you, though, about relevancy, because quite frankly, having that debt ceiling is the only thing that has reined in government spending as much as it has. So you get rid of that, they're going to go crazy. And I mean that about both sides. Who's going to win this? The vote is supposed to come up today in the House. It has not hit the floor yet. I don't think that McCarthy would bring it to the floor if he did not have the votes. So that would push it to the Senate. Manchin has already basically said he will vote with the Republicans to pass
Manchin's
this.
pissed, isn't he?
Manchin is furious
He
because
got
the
dissed.
he got played and the Democrats don't even seem to care. So he is pissed. So bringing him onto voting for this pretty much gives it 50-50. All they need to do is grab one
How
more.
about Cinema? Couldn't she? Wouldn't she vote for it?
I do believe that Cinema is likely to support
That
this.
is a huge political defeat for numbnuts, isn't it?
Now, Biden has already said that he will veto it.
Doesn't make a
But
difference. The optics are awful.
yes, if he vetoes it, if it passes a Democratic Senate and a Republican House, and he vetoes it, and we default on our debt for the first time, it falls squarely on him. He cannot claim it's the Republicans. He cannot blame anybody but
Excellent analysis.
himself.
100%. We'll see how that plays out. Dr. Lopkin, that concludes this edition of Carnivore Bites for this week. Um, Tell our listeners a little bit about how they can contribute to our show in the future.
If you want to talk about anything that we've discussed, if you want to let us know what you want to hear about and let us know your opinions, go to exvadio.com/connect. That's exvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. And you can also listen to every episode of Carnivore Radio at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Thank our listeners.
We'll see you next time.